3 years ago, I married into the Beaumont family, one of the wealthiest dynasties on the East Coast. It was a bizarre arrangement, a ceremony designed to bring good luck to Victoria Beaumont, the family heiress who lay in a coma. In exchange, I got to live the trophy husband dream, a sprawling mansion in Greenwich, a fleet of supercars at my disposal, and a black card with no limit. Then one day, my wife of 3 years, the woman they called the Sleeping Beauty of Wall Street, opened her eyes. She was cold, distant, and clearly in love with someone else. So, I took a freshly printed divorce agreement to my mother-in-law. In response, she grabbed her limited edition Hermes Birkin and said, "Let's go, Ethan. I'm leaving with you." I found my mother-in-law, Catherine, in the wine cellar, swirling a glass of deep red Cabernet. "Mom," I began, holding out the papers, "I want to divorce Victoria." Her hand paused mid-swirl. "Are you sure?" I nodded firmly. "I'm sure. But don't worry, I'll still come visit you all the time. I can still be your personal masseuse." After all, in the 3 years I'd spent at the Beaumont estate, Catherine, a powerhouse director on the board of the family's global conglomerate, had treated me like the son she never had. She was more of a mother to me than my own ever was. To my surprise, she set down her glass and picked up the intercom. "Have the jet prepped for departure immediately," she told her assistant. "And pack my essentials." "Yes, for right now." I stared dumbfounded. "Mom, what are you doing?" Catherine smiled, her elegance unwavering. "I'm tired of this place, too. I'm coming with you. Time for a new chapter." My jaw hit the floor. "But what about Harrison, your husband?" She waved a dismissive hand, as if swatting a fly. "Oh, and tell him I'm divorcing him, too." "Holy shit," I whispered. In my previous life, I was a Wall Street burnout, a financial analyst who ground himself into an early grave. After a solid week of all-nighters staring at stock tickers, I had a heart attack and died right on my trading terminal. I woke up in a parallel universe, in the body of a kid named Ethan Miller, a broke, recent college grad with nothing to his name. At that exact moment, the original Ethan was being tempted by an astronomical sum of money to marry into the Beaumont family and serve as a good luck charm for their comatose daughter. He'd agreed, only to be ridiculed by his ex-girlfriend and buddies for becoming a kept man. He'd gone on a bender and died of alcohol poisoning. As soon as I processed his memories, I saw the Beaumont family's butler at the door, urging me to honor the agreement. A moment later, an alert lit up my phone, a wire transfer with more zeros than I had ever seen in my life. I didn't hesitate. "I'll do it. Where do I sign?" The original Ethan's parents clutched the cashier's check, tears of joy streaming down their faces. "Ethan, you go live a good life with the Beaumonts. Don't you worry about us." Look, I get it. In a world where people worship wealth and scroll through celebrity lifestyles on Instagram, an opportunity like this for someone from the bottom is like winning the lottery. The original Ethan's fragile pride didn't stand a chance against cold, hard cash. I did the math. Victoria Beaumont was in a coma, meaning I'd essentially be a glorified, very well-paid caretaker. But the Beaumonts were practically royalty. For me, this wasn't just a leg up. It was a quantum leap into a life of unimaginable luxury. No more grinding, no more kissing up to bosses. I could achieve financial freedom overnight. A burnout wage slave knows a golden parachute when he sees one. A month later, I was married into the family at their Greenwich estate. The wedding was a simple affair. Afterwards, Catherine handed me the keys to a brand new Aston Martin and an unlimited credit card. "Ethan, I know this is a lot to ask of you. From now on, just make yourself at home. Spend whatever you want. Ask for whatever you need." As for the woman in that room, think of her as a very expensive, very beautiful piece of art, for display purposes only. Catherine Beaumont, born at DuPont, was a core director of the Beaumont Group. She was impeccably preserved, looking more like a woman in her late 30s than a day over, but there was always a flicker of loneliness in her eyes. I was floored. If I didn't know Victoria was her own daughter, I'd have thought they were mortal enemies. Sensing my confusion, she sighed softly. "Victoria's accident was 3 years ago. We've had specialists from all over the world, and they all say the same thing. The odds are slim. This whole good luck charm idea, it's just a desperate prayer." At the time, I was so dazzled by the sheer opulence of the estate and the charisma of my new mother-in-law that all I could do was nod dumbly. "Okay, Mom, Whatever you say. For the next 3 years, I live a life most people only dream of. I'd wake up whenever I wanted, spend the afternoons having cocktails by the pool with Catherine, or learning from her about fine wine, Swiss watches, and contemporary art. Whenever my old, mooching friends tried to visit, they were stopped by security at the main gate, unable to even set foot on the property. When I got bored, I taught Catherine how to play Call of Duty. She was a natural, going from a total beginner to a top-ranked player in no time. Sometimes, when I played badly and cost her a match, she'd compensate me by secretly having a newer, flashier supercar delivered to the garage. Every night, before I went to sleep in the guest bed in her room, I'd look over at my comatose wife and whisper, "Ms. Beaumont, ma'am, thanks to you, this gig is amazing. You just keep on sleeping. Take your time, really." I never, ever imagined that on the 3rd anniversary of our wedding, she would actually wake up. That day, Catherine and I were on the family yacht in the Mediterranean, fishing. I was stretched out on a lounge chair, sunglasses on, enjoying the sun, a glass of vintage Dom Perignon and a tin of freshly flown-in caviar at my side. "She's awake." Ms. Beaumont opened her eyes. The head of staff came running, holding a satellite phone, his voice trembling. My hand jerked, spilling champagne all over the deck. I'm screwed. My cushy life as a kept man was officially over. I scrambled to get up, ready to change and head back, but Catherine gently placed a hand on my arm. She slowly removed her sunglasses, revealing her stunning face. What's the hurry? Her waking up is no reason to interrupt a perfectly good fishing trip. I nearly cried. "Mom, that's your daughter who just woke up from a 3-year coma." She blinked, as if remembering. "All right, I almost forgot." By the time our private jet landed back in Connecticut, Victoria was already sitting up in a top-of-the-line medical bed. She was breathtakingly beautiful, with an ice queen demeanor. She had her mother's delicate features, but her father's cold, hard authority. Her eyes, open for the first time in years, swept over to me with a chilling intensity. I swallowed hard and forced a smile. Honey, you're awake." Catherine followed me in, her tone just as casual. "Good, you're awake." I snuck a glance at Victoria, my mind reeling. Is this really her mother? Victoria didn't speak. Her gaze lingered on me for a moment before shifting to Catherine. Instantly, both Catherine and I straightened up, the air growing thick with tension. Her stare was identical to her father's when he was dressing down and underling, suffocatingly powerful. Finally, she spoke. Her voice was raspy from disuse, but still icy. "Mother, who is he?" Catherine didn't even look up. "Oh, that's Ethan, the husband we got you for good luck. See? It worked." Victoria let out a non-committal her expression unreadable. Then her eyes slowly scanned the master suite, and I belatedly realized that I had, over the past 3 years, transformed it into my personal man cave. A detailed model of a Star Destroyer was mounted on one wall. My high-end gaming rig occupied a corner. A signed, limited edition Tom Brady jersey was tossed over a sofa. Even the air smelled of the cedarwood cologne I always wore. Seeing her brow furrow and her gaze turn colder, I blurted out, "I'll clean it up. I'll put everything back right now." She said nothing, simply closing her eyes as an assistant began a rapid-fire briefing on the 3 years of corporate affairs she had missed. Taking the hint, I backed out of the room. The moment the door closed, Catherine and I both let out a massive sigh of relief, our shoulders slumping in unison. I sidled up to her and whispered, "Mom, are you a little scared of Victoria?" She shot me an annoyed look. "Who's scared?" "It's just that look in her eyes. It's a carbon copy of your father's. Gives me the creeps." I thought of Harrison Beaumont's stony, imposing face and immediately understood. Catherine had been born into one of the country's most powerful families. In her youth, she was the it girl of her generation, a brilliant and beautiful debutante with suitors lining up from Paris to New York. But for the sake of a strategic merger, her family had married her off to Harrison Beaumont, the scion of an equally powerful dynasty. The story went that Catherine had been deeply in love with an artist who disappeared overseas after they were forced to break up. Harrison, for his part, was rumored to have his own lost love, one that got away. Their 20-year business alliance had produced a massive empire and a single heir, Victoria. In my 3 years with the family, I could count the number of times I'd seen Harrison on one hand. When he and Catherine were together, they were more polite and distant than business partners. As I was lost in thought, Catherine patted my shoulder. "What are you thinking so hard about? Come on, I just bought a new blue diamond at auction. Let's figure out a setting for it." My eyes lit up. Thoughts of the newly awakened Victoria vanished. "You're the best, Mom," I chirped, happily following her. Victoria's return was a bombshell for the Beaumont Group and the global financial markets. Catherine had the kitchen prepare an elaborate family dinner and even called Harrison, who was in London handling an urgent merger. That evening, Harrison arrived, looking tired from his transatlantic flight. Trailing behind him was a sharp, impeccably dressed woman in a custom Armani suit, Ava Chun. The butler had told me about her. She was Harrison's special assistant, his longtime right-hand woman, and, according to rumors, his mistress. She had never married. Ava was the picture of professionalism. She handed a folder to Harrison before smiling at Catherine. "Catherine, it's wonderful news about Victoria. A true miracle." I noticed Catherine's fingers tighten ever so slightly around her wine glass at Ava's appearance. But her smile remained flawless. "Thank you for your concern, Ava." At the dinner table, Ava naturally took the seat between Harrison and Catherine. She spoke with an easy familiarity about company matters and Harrison's personal tastes. "Harrison, the chef had this black truffle flown in just for you. You must try it." "Catherine, this vintage is from that new vineyard you were curious about. What do you think?" I watched in silence. Ava carried herself like the lady of the house, yet she maintained a strange, almost scrutinizing watchfulness over Catherine. She wasn't some cheap homewrecker. Her game was on another level entirely. I'd heard that when Victoria had her accident 3 years ago, it was Ava who had masterfully handled the fallout and stabilized the company's stock price. I'd seen her a few times before, always using work as a pretext to come to the estate with Harrison. Each time, she would make a point of checking in on Catherine, her words laced with the subtle implication that she was the one who truly understood Harrison. Once in the garden, I overheard her say to Catherine, "Harrison and I have weathered so many storms together over the years. We have a shorthand that others can't possibly understand. You're so lucky you get to stay home and enjoy the peace and quiet." And every time they spoke, Harrison would coincidentally appear and change the subject, as if trying to protect Ava from Catherine's potential wrath. Just like now, as the tension between the two women thickened, Harrison smoothly redirected the conversation to a new acquisition in the European market. Ava's attention was immediately captured, and she and Victoria launched into a discussion of corporate strategy. I looked at Catherine, who was eating her meal in silence, and suddenly understood the source of that loneliness in her eyes. In this vast empire she had married into, she, the official Mrs. Beaumont, was little more than a beautiful, well-dressed outsider. Even her own daughter, the child she had raised, thought and acted more like Harrison and Ava. "Mom, try this," I said, placing a spoonful of Chef Antoine's signature truffle risotto on her plate. "It's his specialty. Perfect tonight." Catherine's eyes crinkled into a smile, and the distant look faded. "You're always so thoughtful, Ethan." Determined not to let her feel sidelined, I spent the rest of the dinner doing my best to entertain her. Jumping from a new speakeasy I discovered to the latest Bugatti model, from auction house gossip to which country club had the best cigars. I somehow managed to get us through the painfully awkward meal. After dinner, Catherine and I retreated to the home theater to watch the Lakers game. I flopped down a massage chair and tossed her a cold beer. "Mom, look at that pass. Terrible. I could do better." She caught it, taking a very unladylike swig, and laughed. "In your dreams." The truth was, I secretly owned a small stake in the team. Early on, I'd used my financial instincts from my past life and the resources of the Beaumonts to make a few quiet investments in ventures that seemed risky but had huge potential. Esports teams, metaverse real estate, next-gen battery tech. I made a killing, but it drew criticism from some of the older, more conservative board members who thought I was an embarrassment to the family name and wanted to audit my accounts. If Catherine hadn't stepped in and vouched for me, I might have been in real trouble. It was only then that I learned she'd been secretly tracking all my investments and clearing obstacles for me behind the scenes. A spectacular three-pointer drew a cheer from Catherine. She looked like a teenager, her face bright and animated in the glow of the screen. Now, this is much better than those stuffy dinners. Watching her, I found it hard to understand how Harrison could be so blind. She laughed and ruffled my hair. "What are you staring at, you goof?" A moment later, I caught a glimpse of Harrison standing in the doorway. He was watching Catherine, his expression unreadable. As soon as she saw him, her smile faded. She stood up and walked toward him, glancing back at me. "Get some rest, Ethan." Back in the master suite, it hit me. Victoria was awake. As her husband, I was technically supposed to fulfill my duties and share a room with her. My heart started pounding. I quickly called for an assistant. "Hey, can you help me move all my stuff? The gaming console, the collectibles, the jerseys, back to my old guest room?" I had only been staying in the master suite so the top-tier medical team could have round-the-clock access, and my presence as the good luck charm was required. Now that the real occupant was back, it was time for the freeloader to make a graceful exit. The assistant had just picked up my VR headset when Victoria emerged from the en-suite bathroom. She was wearing a silk robe that did little to hide her stunning figure, making her seem less like a CEO and more like a femme fatale. Seeing the assistant moving my things, she frowned. "What are you doing?" I braced myself. "Victoria, you just woke up. You need total peace and quiet. I'm a restless sleeper. I don't want to bother you. It's better if I move back." Her gaze settled on my face, devoid of emotion. "It's late. Do it tomorrow." Once we were alone, the silence was deafening. Victoria sat on the sofa, scrolling through emails on her tablet, the screen's glow illuminating her cold, beautiful face. I perched on the edge of the bed, pretending to read the news on my phone while secretly watching her from the corner of my eye. On a normal night, a funny video would have me howling with laughter. Tonight, not even a threat of world war could get a chuckle out of me. I finally gave up and switched to a financial report, but my eyelids started to droop after a few lines. "Go to sleep." Victoria had put down her tablet. Her voice was startlingly clear in the quiet room. Granted a reprieve, I nervously climbed into bed and spent the entire night lying as stiff as a board. I nodded, and as I sipped my coffee, I noticed a faint red mark just below the collar of her silk pajamas. I quickly looked down at my plate, pretending to be engrossed in my eggs, my mind screaming, "Damn, Harrison!" The old man still got it. Victoria's recovery was a massive boon for the Beaumont Group. Her constitution was incredible, and with the best medical team money could buy, she was back to handling a full workload in less than 2 weeks, on top of a grueling daily physical therapy regimen. One day, the world-renowned physician who came for her final evaluation was full of praise. "Ms. Beaumont's recovery is nothing short of miraculous. The foundational care she received these past 3 years was impeccable. Her body was maintained in peak condition." Catherine, standing nearby, glanced at me. That was all Ethan's doing. He spent 3 years learning therapeutic massage from the specialists, worked with the nutritionist on her meal plans, and even insisted she get daily sun exposure for positive energy. I blushed, feeling a little awkward. The truth was, every time I did a good job with Victoria's care, Catherine would reward me with a treat, a new investment project to manage, or an introduction to some influential people. My skills improved because the motivation was excellent. Hearing this, Victoria looked up at me. "Thank you," she said, her tone flat. It sounded like a CEO telling an employee, "Good work." Over the next few days, my fears were confirmed. Victoria was polite and proper on the surface, but she was completely consumed with reclaiming control of the company. She was a whirlwind of activity, and I barely saw her. After I moved back to the guest room, our paths rarely crossed, except for brief encounters when Catherine was around. We had almost zero personal interaction. Well, that settles it, I thought. She clearly can't stand the sight of her trophy husband. I might as well stop trying. My plan was to just lie low and continue living the good life under Catherine's protection. That all changed at a major business summit hosted by the Beaumonts. The ballroom was glittering with the creme de la creme of society. I stood by Catherine's side, playing the part of silent arm candy, when I noticed him, Julian Vance, the new boy wonder of Silicon Valley, a handsome, brilliant investor who was the talk of Wall Street. And his eyes were glued to Victoria. Suddenly, I was very interested. During a break, as people mingled, I was on the terrace with Catherine when I overheard a few industry titans talking. If it hadn't been for Victoria's accident, The Beaumont-Vance merger, both business and personal, would have been a done deal years ago. There wouldn't have been any room for her. I heard Vance has been completely devoted to her, waiting for 3 years. A union like that, it's the natural order of things. My stomach dropped. It all clicked into place. No wonder people had been subtly asking Catherine about my and Victoria's future plans all evening. Catherine had expertly deflected them, saying, "The children can figure out their own lives. We old folks shouldn't meddle." So that was it. Julian Vance was Victoria's pre-coma boyfriend, or at least a very serious contender. A perfect match of looks, wealth, and power. It was time for me, the inconvenient obstacle, to get out of the way. Just then, Catherine's cool voice cut through the chatter. The Beaumont family's private affairs are not for public speculation. Ethan is my son-in-law and a Beaumont. The men mumbled apologies and dispersed. A lump formed in my throat. Forget it. Whatever was going on between Victoria and Julian Vance, my time here was up. The gravy train had reached its final stop. Shortly after the summit, Victoria officially announced her return as CEO of the Beaumont Group. That day, she and Harrison were at the headquarters in Manhattan, leaving the estate unusually quiet. I went to my room, opened my laptop, and typed out the words divorce agreement. After 3 years, between the resources Catherine had given me and the profits from my own secret investments, I had more than enough money to live comfortably for several lifetimes. I didn't need the title of Mr. Beaumont anymore. The only thing I would miss was Catherine. I found her with the freshly printed agreement in hand and explained my intentions. Without a word of argument, she immediately had her personal assistant begin transferring key assets and arranging travel. "Mom, I'm leaving because the charade is over. Why are you blowing things up?" I asked, panicking and reaching for her laptop. She looked up and smiled, as radiant as ever. "Ethan, life is short. Seize the day. It took me too long to realize that, but it's not too late for you." But Harrison, the company's stock, I worried the fallout would be catastrophic. Her laugh was liberating. The Beaumont Group is solid, and Victoria is back. The sky won't fall. It's time I started living for myself. Her assistant, standing nearby, had tears in her eyes. "You should have done this years ago, Catherine," she whispered. That afternoon, we left 2 divorce agreements on the dining room table, packed several large suitcases, and armed with a wallet full of black cards, boarded a private jet, and left the Beaumont estate behind for good. Catherine took me directly to a private island she owned in the Bahamas. I had never been there before. It was a paradise of pristine beaches and luxurious villas, even more breathtaking than the Greenwich estate. "This place is insane," I said, digging my toes into the powdery white sand and gazing at the turquoise water. Catherine, wearing a wide-brimmed sun hat, reclined on a lounge chair, a distant look in her eyes. "Yes, it's mine, not listed under the Beaumont name. I used to come here for a few days when things got to be too much. No more looking back." I handed her a frosty glass of fruit juice, grinning like an idiot. "From now on, we're the dynamic duo of happily single billionaires." She laughed, taking a sip. "You're right. Just like you said before, a woman, no, a person, needs their own territory. This is our new base of operations." We spent the day getting settled. That night, Catherine had the staff prepare a lavish seafood feast, and we drank fine wine on the beach under a canopy of stars. After a few glasses, she started to open up. I was so foolish back then. I thought an arranged marriage was just what one did. I married him out of spite, thinking we could just live separate lives under the same roof. But I realized that a canary in a gilded cage is still a prisoner, no matter how beautiful the cage is. I tried to fit into his world, I really did. But we were just different people. These past 20 years have looked glamorous from the outside, but inside, I've been running on empty for a long time. I listened quietly, my heart aching for her. Just as I was about to offer some words of comfort, her assistant approached with a satellite phone. "Catherine," she said softly, "it's Mr. Beaumont and Ms. Beaumont. They've been trying my line." Catherine paused, then set down her glass. "Hang up," she said calmly. "Everything that needs to be said is in the agreement." For the next few days, Catherine blocked all communication from the Beaumonts and settled into her role as queen of the island. But I could tell she wasn't as carefree as she appeared. An idea struck me. Mom, I said, since we've got time on our hands, why don't we do something fun? Like produce a movie? Based on your life. Her eyes lit up. That's an interesting idea. Tell me more. So, I pitched her Island Queen. The story of a glamorous society wife who leaves her unhappy marriage, starts a new life on a private island, builds her own empire, and enjoys life surrounded by a rotating cast of handsome young men. I left that last part out. The project created a buzz in the industry before we even started casting. Streaming platforms were fighting for exclusive rights. But just as I was finalizing a deal, the producer called me, his voice grim. Ethan, we might have to shelve the project for now. It turned out the Beaumont Group had started leaning on their partners. If we can't make the movie yet, we'll just have to live it, I declared. So, Catherine and I booked out an entire luxury resort on a neighboring island, a place famous for its stunning scenery and its even more stunning staff, a veritable army of aspiring models and actors who worked as servers, hosts, and activity coordinators. We had just settled into the VIP lounge when a sun-kissed surf instructor with a dazzling smile and an 8-pack of abs approached us. Hey guys, ready for some adventure? Catherine raised an eyebrow, clearly amused. This is already more interesting than a corporate board meeting. I nodded in agreement as another staffer, this one with the soulful eyes of a starving artist, began mixing our cocktails and sketching our portraits on a napkin. On stage, a dance troupe performed a vibrant, high-energy routine. Catherine and I sipped our drinks, enjoying the show, and before long, we were both feeling a little tipsy. You really need to work on your tolerance, she teased, watching me sway slightly. I just grinned dopily. This stuff, it's stronger than it looks. The artist type kindly offered us a glass of hot, tropical fruit tea to help us sober up, leaning in close to set on the table. Just then, a commotion erupted at the resort's entrance. Two familiar figures, flanked by a phalanx of bodyguards, strode toward us, their faces like thunderclouds. It was Harrison Beaumont and my wife, Victoria. Harrison's eyes locked onto me and Catherine, surrounded by handsome young men, and his face turned a dark shade of purple. Catherine, Ethan, what in the hell do you think you're doing? Victoria, a step behind him, her gaze fixed on my flushed face and the artist at my side, looked like she was about to freeze the entire island solid. The singer on stage hit a sour note. The other guests fell silent, all eyes on us. The alcohol buzz vanished. I sat up straight. Catherine, however, remained perfectly composed. She took a slow sip of her cocktail. Harrison, I don't believe that's any of your business. As you can see, I'm enjoying my life. A vein pulsed in Harrison's temple. Catherine, stop this nonsense. Come home. He started to move toward her, but our bodyguards and the resort's security staff instantly formed a human wall. Harrison scoffed. You think these people can stop me? Catherine finally looked him directly in the eye, her voice quiet but firm. Harrison, we've been married for 20 years. It was a business deal. I didn't want it, and you settled for it. Now that Victoria is capable of running the company and the empire is secure, I am done playing the part of Mrs. Beaumont. Harrison's jaw tightened, but before he could speak, she continued. You've only ever cared about your empire and your devoted assistant. So why are you pretending to care about my life now? At her words, a flicker of something I'd never seen before. Panic crossed Harrison's face. The resort manager had politely escorted the other guests away. Catherine stood up and took my arm. We're leaving. I scrambled to follow her. As we passed Victoria, I saw the conflicted look in her eyes and silently pleaded, just sign the papers, please. Let me go. But then she spoke, her voice as cold as ever, but with an undercurrent of frustration. Mother can do as she pleases. But Ethan, you are my legal husband. You will stay. I meekly raised my hand. Ms. Beaumont, I was actually the one who initiated the divorce, and I invited your mom to get away for a bit. Harrison's piercing gaze shot to me. I felt like I was about to be thrown into the ocean. Catherine pulled me behind her. Victoria, you can't force things. If you truly care for Mr. Vance, then sign the papers and be done with it. Don't be like your father, wasting your life and someone else's. Catherine, Harrison's voice was suddenly urgent, almost pleading. It's not what you think. Ava and I. She cut him off with a wave of her hand, a profound weariness on her face. Harrison, I've heard your explanations for 20 years. I'm tired. I just want to live for myself. With that, She turned and walked away without a backward glance. I hurried after her, but I caught a glimpse of Harrison, frozen in place, and Victoria, staring at me with an expression I couldn't begin to decipher. The resort incident quickly became the talk of the elite social circles, spawning all sorts of rumors. Some said Catherine had finally broken free from her gilded cage, while others whispered that I, the audacious trophy husband, had run off with my mother-in-law. It even caused a temporary dip in the Beaumont Group stock. But when the news reached Catherine's family, her equally formidable older brother simply snorted. As long as my sister is happy, that's all that matters. That block of wood Harrison never deserved her anyway. Meanwhile, the resort we'd visited became an overnight sensation, attracting a new clientele of wealthy society women, and their business boomed. A few days later, Harrison landed a helicopter on the island. With him were not only a stone-faced Victoria, but also Ava Chun. From the looks of it, Harrison and Ava had already been arguing on the helipad. Harrison, you and Catherine are divorced. You have no right to dictate where I go. Ava's voice was tight with fury. Harrison's brow was furrowed. Ava, I have tolerated your ambitions because of your service to this company, but you are going too far. The argument escalated. Finally, Catherine, annoyed by the noise, had security let them in. The atmosphere in the glass-walled living room was electric. Harrison stood in the center, his face grim. Ava, we're going to tell Catherine the truth, right here, right now. Ava let out a bitter, almost liberated laugh. The truth about what? Why, I've worked myself to the bone for your company all these years. Harrison, did you really think it was for you? She turned to face Catherine. The ever-composed executive's eyes were a storm of guilt and conflict, which finally settled into a look of raw honesty. Catherine, I am so sorry. I stayed by his side all these years, not because I love him. She took a deep breath. It's because I love you. From the moment I first saw you at your family's home, all those years ago. The wine glass slipped from Catherine's fingers, landing softly on the plush rug. Her eyes widened in disbelief. What? What are you talking about? But you always said that you and he had an understanding. Victoria, standing off to the side, rubbed her temples, looking tired. Mom, I suspected something. Ava, she just went about it the wrong way. Dad was completely oblivious. He just thought she was an incredibly dedicated employee. And just like that, everything made sense. Harrison stood frozen, the first cracks appearing in his stoic facade. He looked from Ava to Catherine, his entire worldview shattering. Catherine clutched her chest, struggling to process it all. She pointed a trembling finger at Harrison, then at Ava, and finally managed to choke out. You people are insane. Get out. All of you get out, she screamed, pointing at the door, her usual grace and composure gone. Ava looked at her, her expression pained but resolute. Catherine, I know you can't accept this right now, but everything I said is true. I'll wait for the day you're ready to see me. Then, she took a stunned Harrison by the arm and let him out. Before Catherine could catch her breath, she noticed Victoria was still there. You too. Go, Catherine said, her eyes squeezed shut. But Victoria took a step forward, her voice uncharacteristically earnest, almost pleading. Mom, you and Dad are getting divorced. I'm an adult. I can choose who I want to be with, can't I? I nearly choked. That was a line from my Island Queen movie pitch. How did she know? Catherine's eyes flew open. Victoria, when did you learn to talk like that? I'm serious, Victoria insisted, glancing at me. Dad and I were wrong. We neglected you for years. I don't want to make the same mistake. I can handle the company remotely. I want to stay here with you. And him. The last two words were almost inaudible. Catherine looked at her daughter, and her anger finally softened into exhaustion. She waved a hand dismissively and walked out to the ocean view terrace. Do whatever you want. I started to follow Catherine, but Victoria's hand gently caught my wrist. Ethan, she said, her voice softer than usual. The thing with Julian Vance was a misunderstanding. He pursued me, yes, but I never agreed. At the summit, he cornered me. I pushed him away. I raised an eyebrow, waiting. I, Victoria Beaumont, am not a fickle person, she said, a faint blush creeping up her neck, though she tried to sound composed. And legally, you are still my husband. For 3 years you touched my entire body. For my physical therapy. You have to take responsibility. I fought back a laugh. Victoria, I was performing a medical procedure. I don't care, she said, suddenly stubborn. She looked me straight in the eye, her gaze intense. I never signed the divorce papers. So you're still mine. Seeing this new, almost childish side to the formidable CEO was both bizarre and amusing. I decided to push her a little. Responsibility? For what? I'm officially retired from the trophy husband business. A flash of panic crossed her face. Then I'll marry into your family, she blurted out. Besides, Mom likes you better anyway. Realizing what she'd said, her face turned bright red. I was speechless. Mom, are you okay? I asked, joining Catherine on the terrace. She was staring at the horizon. She turned, a dazed, dreamlike expression on her face. I feel like I've lived half my life as a joke, or in some kind of bizarre dream. The whole situation did feel surreal. I sat down next to her. Don't think about it, Mom. On another note, Victoria mentioned, it seems the Vance family wants to partner with the Beaumont Group on that new green energy project in Southeast Asia. Catherine responded almost instinctively. Harrison will handle it. There was a note of familiar trust in her voice. Perhaps 20 years of marriage, even without love, builds a bond that outsiders can't understand. And, Ava, I ventured. Catherine sighed and rubbed her temples. Let her cool off. I don't have the energy to deal with any of it right now. Over the next few days, we were bombarded with calls from Harrison, Victoria, and a relentlessly apologetic Ava. Fed up, Catherine and I shut off all our devices, took the yacht out, and went completely off the grid. Out on the open water, there was nothing but blue sky, blue sea, and the cry of gulls. We fished, we snorkeled, we sunbathed on the deck. It was bliss. We almost forgot our troubles. One afternoon, we were returning from a dive, ready to pop a bottle of champagne, when the yacht's engine sputtered and died. We were adrift. As I was about to check the engine, a larger, even more luxurious yacht pulled alongside us. On its deck stood two familiar figures, also dressed in casual resort wear, Harrison and Victoria. Harrison spoke first, looking uncharacteristically awkward. He was holding a toolbox. Catherine, looks like you're having some engine trouble. Need a hand. He cleared his throat. I have a boating mechanic's license. Before Catherine could answer, Victoria stepped forward, holding a platter of fruit. She glanced at me, her tone clipped but not unkind. Mom, Ethan, have some fruit. For the vitamins. Catherine and I stood there on our deck, staring at this strange, new version of the Beaumonts, and then we looked at each other. Finally, Catherine couldn't hold it in any longer. She burst out laughing. Well, I thought, looks like the script for Island Queen needs a complete rewrite. The end, epilogue. Harrison 20 years ago, when the DuPonts proposed the merger, I had just completed a hostile takeover of my biggest competitor. At the celebratory gala, the room was filled with fawning admirers. But through the sea of faces, the only person I saw was her. She was wearing a red Valentino gown, sitting alone in a corner, quietly sipping her wine. She had just returned from her studies abroad. Though she was the center of attention, she had an air of detachment. When she caught me looking, she raised her glass with a slight, mocking smile. Faced with that brilliant, defiant woman, I forgot all my prepared business overtures and could only awkwardly raise my glass in return. Later, my assistant told me DuPont is fighting the marriage. She's in love with someone else, an artist. The family forced them apart. On our wedding night, in the lavishly decorated suite, she stood with her back to me. Harrison, she said coolly, this is a business arrangement. There's no need to pretend. We will not interfere in each other's lives. Fine, I said. I went to the study and stared at merger documents all night, not comprehending a single word. I told myself this was how marriages like ours worked. She was a DuPont, I was a Beaumont. Civility was the best we could hope for. But somewhere along the way, I started to follow her with my eyes. The flowers she arranged, I'd moved to my study, claiming the room needed some color. A passing comment she made on a business case, I'd mull over for days. The rare, gentle smile she gave to a member of the staff would fill me with an inexplicable irritation. Soon after we were married, she became pregnant with Victoria. When she was suffering from severe morning sickness, I bought a private wellness retreat specializing in prenatal care under the guise of an investment. The day she gave birth, I stood outside the delivery room all night, my hands shaking so badly I could barely sign the consent forms. Afterward, I secretly had a vasectomy. I couldn't bear the thought of her going through that pain again. Ava often told me, "Harrison, if you don't say what you feel, no one will ever know." But I was a man accustomed to control. The one thing I couldn't control was my own heart, and the words always got stuck in my throat, coming out as "this project has a good profit margin," or "the stock is up again." It wasn't until she left the divorce agreement on the table and walked away with Ethan that I finally understood. All my silent, clumsy attempts to protect her had only pushed her further away. Now, on the deck of this yacht, Catherine was looking at me. There was surprise in her eyes and distance, but also the faintest trace of amusement. "You know how to fix a yacht, Harrison?" I took a step closer, my gaze steady and sure. "No, but I can learn, if it's what you need." And